Hi, Cancer. Welcome to your March 2020 Astro Update. I'm Raina, and this is a month where, until the 19th, you're going to have the sun at a friendly angle to you because the sun is in Pisces. So if you kind of reflect back on prior years, you might find the time in late February to late March to be very nice for you. And this will be no exception, although I will say that as the month begins, you're going to have Mercury retrograding in the same sign in Pisces. So we're talking about your ninth house. And this is another thing that makes this so great, is that the ninth house, which is ruled by Sagittarius in the universal chart, is a house that deals with expansion. And expansion, if we kind of boil it down in a few words, it's like a sense of possibilities in life, broad ideas, concepts. It's a mental house. So it's really about your attitudes. And this is why it's a house of philosophy. And it's because it's like, what do I think life is about? And I feel personally like so many people, or too many people, don't have a philosophy of life. Like they just kind of go through the motions. And therefore, when things don't go the way that they had planned to do, they rely on material nature to kind of see them through. So whether it's an avoidant pattern through addictive behavior or, and that can be escapism in any form, but kind of that trying to feel better through some behavior or substance, and things like that, instead of looking at it philosophically. And actually, this is the God house, so we can bring religion into this, but there are a lot of people that have been kind of turned off by the, the organized religion that they grew up with, and which is unfortunate because then they totally get away from anything that has anything to do with a belief system, especially a supernatural belief system. And I feel like so many people would be helped if they could cultivate that in their life. And before I continue, this is something that I want to say because I'm a little bit self-conscious right now. I received a critique of a video of a reading that I just did, a tarot reading, and the person said that I shouldn't inject my personal opinions into things and that I was too judgmental. And I want people to know that I'm not, when I say things, I'm very straightforward, but I'm not trying to be judgmental. If you're struggling with something that I happen to touch upon, it's that I have to bring to my readings my own beliefs. I can't just parrot somebody else that is out there. And I am fully, maybe I am a philosopher. I am a sun in Sagittarius. So this is kind of, and that's one of the criticisms of Sages, is that people see them as preachy. And I just hope that I don't come across that way. But I do, that was an insight that came to me that I feel like, people would be so helped if they really thought about what their life means to them, that it would give them a sense of order on a basic level. So that's what I mean by that. And I feel like you're going to have that in this month of March, that and I feel like you have that every month when the sun is in Pisces. However, because Mercury is retrograding here, and if you're listening in February, this is going to be the case as well, is that you're going to be rethinking your belief system. And this is also a good thing because it makes you question your beliefs. And so, for instance, if you have felt kind of constricted by a certain like set of beliefs, maybe religious training that you were brought up on, and you say, wait a second, I don't think that's true, or I don't agree with that, or I think it's kind of true, but I think it's this way. This is how I believe this is a life well lived, instead of just kind of accepting, but you're interacting with life back to life. And this is the ninth house is the house of higher order learning, which is supposed to be university learning, but I'm not going to get into that because, sometimes that doesn't work out so much, where it's more indoctrination than actually having you interact and give your ideas about the material that you're learning. And that's what I see the ninth house is ultimately being about. Now we have the mundane knowledge of the third house. Now, how do we put our cosmic spin on it? Okay. On the 4th, Mercury goes back into Aquarius, which is the 8th house. So it's losing degrees. It's going back into Aquarius. And the 8th house is another house that we can associate with God, but coming from more of the supernatural things that go bump in the night perspective of, this is the house of death. And so we could say disembodied entities that people channel, for instance. I mean, the 8th house is metaphysics, but it's the occult, the hidden side of things. The 9th house may be more of the organized belief systems in the form of different religious sects or whatever. So you may be kind of veering back and forth. Cancer is a water sign, innately psychic, and yet a very traditional sign. And so family matters to you. Maybe traditional values are things that you hold in high esteem. But if you've had some experiences that you can't explain that have a supernatural psychic, flavor to them, and your religion thinks that they are scary, bad, whatever, that might come in conflict with you, because you may say, well, wait a second, I would like to be a medium or a psychic, and I think I could help people. Why is that? Why would that be bad? So it's something that you're tossing in your mind, perhaps. The 8th house can be about, it's about death, but it can be shared resources. So since Mercury can be like contractual things, this might have something to do with a will. And you may be kind of like turning it over in your mind, what is the right course of action here? If you have had any kind of, issue with perhaps even family members, and that has created a bit of maybe a falling out or some other miscommunication, that could be evidenced here. On the same day, Venus goes into Taurus. That's its own sign, so it really is doubly activated. And it's in your 11th house of hopes and wishes, so that's really cool, because that could be something that you've longed to experience. And getting the money for it, getting the backing. Oh, one thing about the shared resources of the 8th house is if you've been trying to get a loan, maybe something comes through. Now, I like that it's happening on the same day that Venus is going into that 11th house, on the same day that Mercury goes back into your 8th. So you may get a loan that you had thought the funding fell through. So keep the faith if you're listening before then. Mercury goes direct on the 9th at 28 degrees of Aquarius, 8th house. So settling something in that department. And on the same day, the moon there's a full moon at 19 degrees of Virgo in your 3rd house. Now, the 3rd house can be siblings. So I was wondering if there was any family connections here. If you have had any kind of a probate issue, you may find out that a sibling was doing something, withholding information. So this could be like secrets coming out about a sibling, or just realizing something about a sibling. In the most extreme example, it could be severing ties with a sibling because of, what they may have been up to. That maybe this is the final straw, though. Maybe it's not the only thing that has ever happened between the two of you, but you may be very disgusted if they were doing something shady. On the 16th, Mercury is back into Pisces again in that ninth house. Another thing that we have to talk about the ninth house is foreign travel. So we're going to start having 10th house activations with Aries. So this could be even connected to work. But, this is part of that expansiveness where you're going long distances, and that is a form of physical, geographical expansion. And maybe getting, everything ready, maybe getting your passport ready, what have you. On the 19th, we have the astrological new year. I'm looking forward to this year for some reason. I don't know about you. I'm looking forward to spring. I'm in the northern hemisphere. I was going to say sorry, Australians, sorry, New Zealanders. But you know something? Fall is a beautiful time of year as well. So you've got a wonderful thing going on. I just am just so confused as to how, somebody can feel like rebirth at a new year and it be the fall. It just seems like it should just, everybody should have spring in March. And so anyway, this is a time to dream big. Now for you, this would be career matters. What kind of intentions can you set? Actually, we'll talk about the new moon because that could be also a great time for setting intentions. But the new year is some people do vision boards at the time of the astrological new year. The only thing about vision boards that irks me, I would love to do a vision board, is getting images. I mean, there's just not magazines that can give you what you want. It's just frustrating in that sense. So if anybody has any tips on how you can get a bunch of images without having to print them out online, which could get pretty expensive, let me know down below. So on the 21st, Saturn goes into Aquarius. So this is important. I've already done a video for Cancer Sun and Cancer Rising about this transit. So please do check out my playlist on Saturn into Aquarius and find Cancer there. I go into great detail. But it's only going to be here briefly. In July, it's going to go back into your opposite sign, Capricorn, back into that 7th house. So while it's here, and in 2021, when it is really, or the end of 2020, when it begins to stay in Aquarius, you're going to be looking at 8th house matters and how you can become more disciplined. Now, as with other things in astrology, there are duplications, we can call them, but there will be slight nuances. And one of the themes of the 8th house is about rebirth. But part of it is also purging, and addictions can be part of that thing that must be purged. So with Saturn in the 8th, you may get control over your compulsive tendencies. 8th house is obsessive behavior, and I always consider addictions to be obsessive compulsive disorders, because really the person is fixated on something even when they know it hurts them. They can't stop doing it. So that's a compulsion. Since I'm not trained in that area, I don't know what a official mental health expert would say about it, but it just makes sense to me. It really doesn't matter. It's just a label, but just curious if that will affect any Cancer people out there, if that's anything that you're struggling with. Because the 8th house is a water house, like your 4th house that you rule of home and family. The 8th house is Scorpio's house, what we've been talking about. And for some of you who have wanted to study astrology or the tarot, this may be a time when you take the initiative, but you're also very methodical about it. You're doing it, you want to learn it very much inside out. And you may even want to parlay it into a career, because Saturn rules the 10th house of career. So when Saturn goes into the 8th house, there may be some kind of a career goal that you have in the area of metaphysics or the occult. Another thing too with Saturn in the 8th house, some people who are coupled may find that they have to kind of take on more responsibility with finances. Since this is the house of shared resources, maybe your spouse is retiring. Maybe they have some kind of an injury or illness that has caused them to be sidelined, and you have to pay more of the bills, or maybe in some cases all of the bills. This is a temporary thing, and there's a reason for it. There's always reasons for what happens in our lives. So if you can approach it with a sense of this is being for your highest good, that would be a great attitude to adopt, as you are trying to navigate this, challenge in your life. If it is a challenge, maybe it's not a challenge. Maybe you already make enough money for the both of you. But this can also be a time to restructure debt and to pay off debt too. I've read that them saying it's not a good time to take out new loans. But if you've already had a loan earlier that you applied for, obviously that might be different. On the 24th, there's a new moon at 4 degrees of Aries, 10th house of career, so new developments with career. Great time to set your intentions for what your career goals are. And maybe your career goals aren't like the typical. Maybe you want to do things that are more community oriented and less, about you. Then, maybe you want to build a community of people. Like, for instance, let's say that you are somebody who sells crafts on Etsy. Maybe you make jewelry, and you want to create a community of like-minded souls, and you do so like on the internet, but it still can benefit your business, but that's not the only goal that you have. And so you're looking for ways to reach out to others and have that tribe. Find your tribe. And then on the 30th, Mars goes into Aquarius, which is the 8th house. So Mars can be a bit combative and aggressive. Is there something going on with a will that is making you fight? Sometimes I think about Cancer, because Cancer is kind of a bit, I don't know if I'd say contradictory or complicated sign. And the reason I say that is because Cancer people can sometimes seem timid to me, where they are afraid to, bring something up directly with another person because they're afraid of the blowback. They just don't want that kind. They're very sensitive souls. You are very sensitive souls. But it's also a cardinal sign. So there is that ability to take charge of a situation or of your life in general. And the thing that I always wonder about, because I do witness sometimes Cancer people being quite aggressive in their relationships, is, what exactly is coming from that? Is it the cardinal modality that is influencing that, or is it simply that maybe their sun sign is Cancer, but their moon sign is Aries or something, Leo, and so they can be influenced by their moon quite, more than the average sign. I don't know. And they have like a very aggressive or straightforward, blunt moon sign, and that makes them less, like a shrinking violet. Because I normally think of Cancer when they get angry as passive aggressive. And you look at your Mars sign to see how you express anger, and also you have to look at your you have to look at a number of things, but also the aspects to Mars. If you have a lot of hard aspects to Mars, then you may have trouble effectively expressing anger. You may express anger in a much more destructive way. Destructive to yourself, though, too, not just to other people, where you don't get to have what you want because you're blowing it by blowing up. And so I think of Cancer as more like little digs, little, sarcasm, hinting around, that pouting, manipulation, but, pouting is a form of manipulation to try to make somebody feel guilty, but things like that. And so in any case, I don't want to end on that note, but I really was wondering if, some Cancer people are very aggressive in their relationships, where they, if, because I think of Cancer too as very sensitive to others' feelings, their needs, but especially if you have inner planets in Leo, you may be much more like diva-esque, where you're just like, how dare you do that to me, to moi, and just be on your high horse or something. But, and then I'm just kind of being facetious, because there may be something where somebody did you dirty that has to do with money. Maybe a spouse. I'm thinking it might have something to do with like an inheritance. But yeah, I mean, that full moon in the third house, that's some kind of something that you become aware of. And I was thinking it could be through a sibling or siblings. But could it be that you get some kind of a bill in the mail that makes you realize, oh man, my spouse, charged up, all of our credit. They ran up our credit to the limit, and now our bank account is cleaned out, or something like that. So I'm going to leave it to you what this might mean to you. But anyway, thanks for listening. If you would like a private reading, I'm astrology based, so you came to the right place. And I have to say that when I do tarot readings, because I do mainly astrological private readings. But anyway, my website link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.